Hey, it's Rebecca West with Seriously Happy Homes here with 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝗃 to share my happy home with you. Come on in. So this room is a combination guest room and workspace for me. And one of the things I needed to do was figure out how to make it a space that was going to be mostly lovely for me to work in, because I'm the one who gets to spend most of the time here, especially in a pandemic era. And I love this room because it's right off the front garden. I get to enjoy the birds and enjoy nature no matter how many hours I'm putting in at work. But it's also a guest room, and it's really important to us to have a guest space where people can come crash if they needed to. So I wanted to make sure that it was very convertible. And right now it's shoved against the wall in the corner, and the nightstand that you will, if I have people stay here, lives here when it's my workspace. And then when it turns into a guest space, I pull the bed off the wall, I take this nightstand and I put it in the corner, and I take my desk and I turn it around, face it towards the wall, and it becomes the nightstand on the other side of the bed. I also made a decision when I was making it my workspace to have the desk floating off the wall. I could have totally left it facing the wall, but A, who wants to look at a wall? And B, in this day and age when I'm doing coaching via Zoom, I needed to think about my background. And so this way I was able to control what's happening in my background. The other thing I did with this room is I chose a really big rug. And so that way I can easily slide the bed over, and I can do these adjustments without trying to deal with a small rug that might only be fitting one side of the room or the other side of the room. So I got these curtains from IKEA, these dark green velvet curtains from IKEA. I'm a big fan of saving money when I can, so obviously IKEA, but also taking two off-the-shelf panels and seaming them together, because this is a really long window, and that way I have custom width curtains without the custom width curtain price point. And one of the things that people really wonder is, how can you curate and show off a collection of lots and lots of little tiny things? So in my case, again, IKEA to the rescue, they had this really great display case, and I was able to really showcase all of my little tiny rocks by collecting it and curating it right into one display case. I can enjoy it every single day, especially sitting right across from it at my desk. So this is my dining room. It's obviously very connected to the rest of my house. Kitchen's over here, living room's over there, entry is right there. And when we remodeled this house, and it was very different when it was first purchased, the walls were in completely different locations. The front door to the house was off the side of the house. It wasn't off the front of the house. And by the time we figured out our new layout and how we were going to remodel it, there was only one place left for the dining room, and it was right here, right off the entry. It's fantastic when I have friends over for dinner, because again, they just come in and then the table's set and they're just really walking into a party right away. And it's not awkward at all, which is fantastic. It also allowed me to do a really wonderful light fixture that's a feature, and that really sets off all of these rooms because they're all really, really interconnected. But thinking about the size of the table, I would have loved to have a longer table, but it wasn't going to feel good in the room in terms of flow. These pieces, the things that are in here are finds, things that I searched out or things that I knew that I wanted. This big map, I wanted a big piece of art here. Once upon a time, I actually had a big calendar set here. I did a big gallery wall using the 12 pictures from the calendar, and I loved that. But then I wanted to change it up. But at every point, I knew I wanted this to be a feature wall. So when I changed it up, again, Craigslist was my friend. I just chose art that would make me smile and create a feature wall at a price point that I wanted to spend. And then I flanked it with pictures from our wedding, because of course it's one of the happiest days of my life, and I wanted to really have that central in the house, because this dining room, being right off the entry like this, means it's the heartbeat of the entire house. Over here in the kitchen, it's nice and petite. It's a nice little contained space that was limited by the footprint of the house. I actually really like smaller houses because I like the puzzle of figuring out, how are we gonna make this work for ourselves? The key was, I wanted to make sure that the stove had counter space on either side of it. This is only 12 inches of counter and a 9-inch cabinet. But it's enough where, as a right-handed person, we can put a spoon down rather than having to transfer it to our non-dominant hand and put it on the left side. And then we've got our food storage zone. Behind me is the pantry. This is where the entry to the door, to the house used to be, which is so crazy because the street's over there. So it was a very strange house when my husband bought it. One of the choices we made when we did this remodel, actually two choices. First, this is a beautiful built-in Sub-Zero fridge. There's basically, if you're thinking about price points, a motorcycle in my kitchen. And when we were making the decision to go with a really high-end appliance, because this is so small and so petite, the idea of having something built in, very streamlined, that wasn't gonna kind of jut out. And then second, we did this pull-out full-height pantry right here, because fridges need some clearance in order to be able to open your door all the way and get those drawers open in your fridge. And then over on the other side here, one thing to know, you don't have to install your backsplash for a really long time when you do your remodel. I wasn't sure what I wanted as my feature backsplash. So when we first did our remodel, honestly, I installed the travertine pencil tile and I installed the 1/2-inch mosaic tile. And then this was just sheetrock, painted sheetrock for the longest time while I decided what I wanted it to be. So now we're gonna go into my living room, which is one of my favorite places in the whole house, which is funny because in some ways it's the room we spend the least amount of time in, because I will admit the TV is not in this room, it's in the TV room. And of course, we spend a lot of time in front of the TV. But I really wanted my living room to be a place where I could gather with friends or sit and read a book and it wouldn't be about the TV. So I made a choice and my husband, God bless him, went along with it and we put the TV in its own room. So that means that this room is about gathering and about quiet. And everything in here, I mean, maybe not everything, but pretty much everything in here tells a story. So let's start with the big things, right? I wanted it to feel like you're gathering around a fire pit and you can converse with other humans when they're allowed to come over to your house. So we've got an L-shaped sectional here, which wraps the corner of the living room. So just starting over here on the sofa, I mean, this doesn't have a story. It's just an IKEA pillow, but it's got a scarab on it and that's so awesome. I mean, when I see things that make me smile, that's what makes me decide whether or not I should bring them home. Over here, adventure awaits. My husband and I are huge travelers, so this was just a home goods pillow, but it speaks to what my husband and I are about, and I love that. These little creatures, right? I've got a stuffed little bunny, and I've got a stuffed toad right here. You wouldn't necessarily expect to find either of those things in a grown-up's living room, but the bunny was when I was traveling and visiting with my mom in Maine. I just came across it. It was the softest thing I'd ever touched in my entire life. And I said, I just want this in my life. I want to pet it. And so I brought it home. The toad was something that my mom found when she was living on a boat in the South Pacific for 3 years, of all things. And somebody on a South Pacific island handmade that out of leather. And then when she felt like she was done with it, I got to inherit it. So now the toad lives in my house. Over here on the mantle are a lot of mementos and things too, of family and travel. We've got the first piece of art that I ever bought for myself. When I say art, this is like the first piece that was made by an artist rather than just a print that I found somewhere, which is my unicorn skull, because unicorns are a touchstone for me with me and my grandmother. My other grandmother got this print from Paris when she was traveling there, gosh, probably 60, 75 years ago now. This Harris tweed flask is from my husband and I's trip to Scotland. Like everything here just tells a story about either something we've done or connects us to family, and it makes us feel like we know where we are, we know who we are. I don't like to get too attached to things, but really these things are all anchors to who I am and where we come from. And so they are important to me. Even under the coffee table here, which by the way, trick I like, this coffee table is round, and I like that because it means that you're not gonna hit your shin on a hard corner as you're walking past it. And also it just kind of feels more comfortable. It feels like a fire pit, right? You can gather around something that's round. And then underneath of the coffee table here, one of the pieces you're seeing right here, this is an accordion in its case. So my favorite thing in this whole living room, I will admit, is this hanging chair. And I love it for like a million reasons. But first, I love it because it's a hanging chair. And that's just fun, and I want my house to be fun. The other reason I love it though is because it takes me back to growing up And in my grandmother's home, she had a hanging chair right in the middle of her living room. And so while her hanging chair was actually not comfortable, and this one, thank goodness, is actually comfortable, it takes me back to that family memory. It connects me to my grandmother, and it is the coolest thing in my house. So before we go downstairs, over here is a gallery wall, and this is our travel gallery wall. So my husband and I decided that we would buy art every time we took a trip. And so you've got the story of our marriage right here on the wall. You've got the honeymoon we took to Italy. You've got the second to last trip we took to Scotland with our deer head right here made out of Harris tweed. This was a trip he took to Poland with his father. This was when we went to Spain. So like we have this wonderful wall that evokes all of those memories and brings them back and kind of allows us to travel even when we can't, either because work is work or because, you know, global pandemics are keeping you from traveling. The other thing I really kind of randomly love over here in this corner of my house is this bowl of peanuts. We keep a bowl of peanuts right here because pretty regularly we have a little squirrel who shows up at our back door and looks at us with sad squirrel eyes and says, "Can I have some peanuts?" So as you come down to the lower level of my house, one of the things that people will notice pretty immediately is how low the ceilings are, right? I can touch them and I'm not that tall. This was just an unfinished basement when we moved into this house, and I'm talking really unfinished. In fact, this staircase didn't even used to go this direction, it went the other direction. So that end of the house, which I'll show you in a bit, was the rec room in this house. And this side of the house was just unfinished basement with a bunch of ducting, so this came down even lower, a big old oil furnace, and then a really randomly floating toilet that was installed in the middle of an unfinished concrete wall room. So like I said, when this was an unfinished space, there was a toilet floating out in the middle of nowhere. That toilet was there when we bought this house. When I worked through the layouts to figure out the new configuration, I knew that I wanted a tub and a separate shower. And so I had to figure out, based on the footprint of available space, how I was going to lay it out. So I had them put the toilet here, but I'm really proud of it and I really love this room. And here are the things that I think that I did that made it work. So number one, I used vertical lines to create a little bit of lift. So the fact that that back wall is very dark and then the travertine of the shower is very light creates some vertical lines, and it happens again over here where the vertical line of the travertine by the tub and the shower is offset by the vertical line of the dark paint. That creates some lift to the room. It also allows for contrast, which is my favorite design tool, because if that wall and that wall were the same beige as the travertine, which I did actually do over here, the room would feel so flat. It just would kind of become beige, and beige is both a color but also just a feeling, and it's not a good feeling. So this cozy and dark little area of my house was one of those areas where you kind of have some leftover space and you're not quite sure what to do with, right? It's just really the landing of a big hallway space between my bedroom, my closet, and my bathroom. Originally we used it, like a lot of people would, as a workout space. We had a recumbent bike and a rowing machine in here. But when my husband decided he wanted an elliptical, these low ceilings wouldn't allow for that. So we moved the elliptical and workout space to the garage, and then we had this leftover space to do something with. So I decided to turn it into a meditation and yoga space for myself. So I hung these curtains to create a little bit of distinction between the rooms, and, you know, full disclosure, these are hung up with little thumbtacks into the ceiling because I knew that I don't have kids running around the house, nobody's gonna pull on them, and if they did, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So I didn't have to do something more, substantial to actually hang them. So I hung these home goods curtains with thumbtacks from the ceiling, creating a little bit of a divider. The other thing I did was I got myself a futon. So this is just a twin size futon. And then I got a piece of plywood and I bought legs at Lowe's, and I made myself a platform bed or platform for the futon so that it could just sit here and be elevated off the floor. It was really important to my husband that it didn't look like some sort of sad frat house spare bedroom. So I needed to make sure I elevated it. Putting the pillows on the two ends made it not bed-like, and then I can come into the space and enjoy it. I set it off with a little rug that I found at a consignment store. And then I kind of wasn't sure what to do with the final wall, but I needed something that would make it feel finished. And I came across this whole suite of these 1x1 panels at my local Goodwill, and I just bought them all, and I said, well, that seems like a good way to make a gallery wall, and I hung them all and created a textural feature that finished the space, bringing some of that dark element over onto this light wall to balance out the dark walls that were on the other side. So this is my master bedroom, the one room in my master suite that actually has full, wonderfully tall ceilings. And it's also kind of an oversized room, which was a challenge when I was trying to figure out how to set it up. Because while it's a big room, it's also a hallway from the landing of the stairs to the backyard. So I have to make sure I'm allowing for that passage. Then I've got a small amount of wall over here, a window over here, and a fireplace behind me. So figuring out where my bed was going to live was a bit of a challenge. So ultimately, I found on Craigslist a canopy bed, which I thought was super cool. By using a canopy bed, it kind of created that feeling of shelter. And then it turns out that I love actually having my head next to the window because I can open the window at night and get all that fresh air, which is much better for my sleep quality. To make it feel a little bit cozy and more sheltered, I covered the whole window with sheer window treatments, and then I ended with those beautiful burnt orange silk panels, faux silk panels. They're from Target. So when the house was original, when we bought it, there was a big oil heating furnace in it, one of those big octopus oil furnaces, and it was taking up a ton of the space in the area where the meditation room and the master closet and bathroom are. We knew we wanted to decommission that, which meant we had to figure out the heat source for the whole house. So upstairs, we just went with really simple in-wall electric heaters. And then down here, we did a combination of in-floor heat for the bathroom and hallway areas, and then we did an insert for our fireplace. So when it gets cold enough that we need extra heat, the fireplace just kicks on because it's on a thermostat, and we get the enjoyment of a fire and also a wonderful amount of heat. I needed to figure out how I was going to fill this big wall. I came to the marriage with this great big mirror, which normally I would have put in my closet, but the ceiling heights are way too low for me to put this mirror in there. So it was a great way to anchor this wall, and then around it, I filled it with artwork, some of which my mom painted, a piece that I got because a client was getting rid of it, and a piece that I randomly found at Goodwill. So as an interior designer, obviously the inside of my house is really important to me, but the outside of my house is just as important. The backside of the house started out when my husband bought this house as a big, weedy, sloped backyard. And we decided, you know what? We would rather actually invest that money into our house, but we love the results. So the first thing we did, we reconstructed the deck so that it had a couple of big posts instead of lots of tiny little sticks that were in the way. Having an outdoor space that's covered in a way that the rain won't drip on you is gold. So now we have this massive underdeck space where we were able to create this seating area with a gas fire table and upholstered chairs because they're not going to get wet. And we can go out there, whether it's winter or summer, and enjoy that space all year round with ourselves or with our friends. And we also terraced the whole backyard. So like I said, it was this weedy slope, and now it's terraced. So we have that underdeck area at one level, and then you step down to a pathway that leads back up to the upper deck. And then you step down one more time to this big concrete landing that we used. We did a stained concrete, and that was actually where we got married, and then was also the dance floor for the wedding. So that back space is, I mean, it's a real treasure, and it really expands the footprint of our living, given that the inside space is a little bit more constrained, and the outside space can become part of our living square footage. Thanks so much for coming and visiting with me in my home. This has been Rebecca West with Seriously Happy Homes in Barry Ave.